She looked like the last person who could stop a massacre. A cardigan, a shopping list, a tired smile, nothing more. But 3 minutes later, 200 lives would hang on her trigger finger. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more untold stories from Stories Unseen. The mall felt quiet that Tuesday, almost too quiet. Fluorescent lights hummed above half-empty corridors. A coffee shop steamed near the entrance. 2 kids dragged backpacks behind them, and a cashier at the bookstore yawned into her hand. Ordinary scene, ordinary people. Elena fit right in. She wore jeans softened by years of washing, a cardigan that smelled faintly of chalk dust, and reading glasses strung on a cheap chain. To anyone watching, she was just another suburban mom here for errands, here for a birthday gift. On paper, she was a retired teacher. To her daughter Izzy, she was just mom. And to most of Redwood Harbor, she was nobody special at all. But Elena's shopping bag wasn't empty yet. She was on a mission of a different kind, one no one else around her could see. Izzy's 16th birthday was days away, and Elena had promised to bring home the perfect gift: noise-canceling wireless earbuds. Rose gold. She had circled the store name on a scrap of notebook paper and tucked it between her wallet and a receipt for groceries. A mother's errand. A small promise. Still, Elena walked differently, even if no one else noticed. Her pace was measured, her shoulders squared. She never entered a space without clocking the exits, never passed a stranger without reading their hands. Old habits, unshakable ones. She had spent 20 years suppressing them, burying the part of herself that once belonged to another world, the Marine Corps. Scout sniper, Iraq, Afghanistan, 119 confirmed kills. Not even Izzy knew. To most people, Elena's only war stories were parent-teacher conferences and late-night grading marathons. But somewhere deep, locked away behind the cardigan and chalk dust, lived a woman who once crawled through dust storms, squeezed a trigger at distances measured in miles, and watched empires burn through a rifle scope. She had chosen peace. She had chosen motherhood. She had chosen normal. And yet, as she stepped onto the polished tile of Harborview Galleria, something in her spine tightened. The fluorescent hum seemed sharper. The silence stretched too long between footsteps. A flicker of instinct, almost subconscious, whispered across her nerves. Something was wrong here. She brushed the thought away, adjusted her glasses, focused on the birthday gift, on Izzy's smile when she opened the package. But the whisper didn't leave. It lingered. It coiled. Elena paused at the base of the escalator, scanning the upper level. Families, shoppers, harmless faces. Still, her pulse ticked faster, as if her body knew before her mind would catch up. Because while Elena Marquez searched for earbuds, a young man in a black hoodie was already inside the mall. His duffel bag held more than clothes, and in less than 6 minutes, Elena's past, the one she thought she'd buried forever, was about to come roaring back. Kyle Renshaw walked into Harborview Galleria like a shadow no one wanted to notice. 24 years old, gaunt from too many nights staring into the blue glow of a computer screen. His hoodie was zipped to the throat, jeans stiff with neglect, and the duffel bag slung over his shoulders seemed heavier than his narrow frame could handle. He had rehearsed this walk in his head 100 times. He knew which cameras covered which angles, which corridors looped without blind spots. He knew that on a Tuesday afternoon, Harborview's part-time security guard usually lingered by the food court kiosk, bored, sipping soda. Kyle wasn't guessing. He had studied. He had mapped. He had devoured every manifesto from every name whispered with dread: Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook. To him, these weren't tragedies. They were blueprints, and today was his masterpiece. He passed a family with a stroller. Nobody noticed the tension in his jaw, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. To them, he was just another young man carrying gym clothes or textbooks, Normalcy was his camouflage. Inside the men's restroom, he locked a stall, dropped the duffel, and unzipped it with reverence. Out came an AR-15 variant, matte black, polished by weeks of obsessive cleaning. 6 magazines clinked together, 180 rounds in total. Kyle's hands shook not from doubt, but from anticipation. Society had ignored him. Today, he would make sure it never forgot his name. What Kyle Renshaw didn't plan for, what his obsessive spreadsheets and diagrams never accounted for, was a retired Marine sniper pushing a shopping cart 70 yards away. At the same moment Kyle fitted his first magazine, Elena Marquez was stepping off the escalator, her instincts gnawing at her calm. She adjusted her bag, eyes sweeping. Nothing obvious, nothing alarming. Still, that whisper in her bones refused to fade. Across the mall, a bathroom door opened with the sound of metal scraping tile. A hoodie disappeared into the crowd, and the duffel, no longer full, sagged lightly against Kyle's hip. The predator had arrived, and in less than 60 seconds, the first shot would crack. The sound was unmistakable. Sharp, repetitive, not construction, not a backfiring car, rifle fire. People screamed before they even understood. Mothers yanked children to the floor. Shoppers froze like statues, then broke into chaotic sprints toward exits. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls was drowned by the stench of fear. But Elena Marquez didn't run. Her body moved before her mind caught up. 20 years of combat discipline snapped awake, as if someone had flipped a switch buried deep inside her. The cardigan, the glasses, the shopping list, they all evaporated. What remained was the sniper. Her first move wasn't toward the door. It was toward cover, a concrete planter. She crouched, eyes scanning angles, listening. The cadence of the shots told her everything. AR platform, semi-automatic rhythm, shooter inexperienced but determined, 30 rounds per magazine. She counted the gaps. He was still in his first, while others trampled over dropped bags and toppled strollers. Elena's breathing slowed. Inhale, exhale. Control the heart, control the hands. Through the chaos, she glimpsed him. Black hoodie, second-level balcony, firing downward into the crowd. He had high ground, clear lanes of fire. Amateurs panic and spray. Professionals select targets. Kyle was somewhere between reckless, but not stupid. She could see the danger unfolding with sniper clarity. A young mother cowered behind a bench, 3 children pressed to her chest. The angle was bad. In seconds, he would notice them. Elena needed to close distance. She ditched her shopping bag, slid along the planter, then darted toward the maintenance exit she'd clocked on arrival. Old habits save lives. The door was unguarded, propped with a mop bucket abandoned in the panic. Behind it, a narrow service corridor stretched like a lifeline. Elena grabbed a loose steel rod from a tool cart, the weight solid in her palm. Improvised weapon, not a rifle, but leverage, and leverage was all she needed. She calculated 30 rounds. A pause, a reload. That pause was her window. She had lived entire missions in smaller margins. Her mind flickered, uninvited. To Izzy, 16 years old, the birthday gift still unbought. Did Izzy know her mother's hands once ended wars? Did she know those hands could just as easily end a life inside this mall? Elena bit the thought away. There was no room for reflection. Not now. Not when seconds meant lives. She slipped back through a side door, re-entering the main floor 20 yards off Kyle's flank. The mall was chaos. But chaos was her cover. She moved low, quiet, invisible. Ahead. The shooter paused. The magazine clicked empty. Elena tightened her grip on the steel rod. 3 seconds. That's all she had. 3 seconds before he slammed a fresh mag into the rifle. Her muscles coiled, her breath slowed. Her vision narrowed to a single point. When Kyle lifted the weapon toward a family trapped by a bench, Elena Marquez exploded into motion. the moment Kyle Renshaw slammed his empty magazine to the floor. Elena moved, heart steady, muscles coiled. She broke from cover with the precision of a predator. Every inch of the mall, the echoes, the chaos, the shrieks of children blurred into background noise. Only the shooter remained sharp. Her instincts screamed to take the rifle. A clean shot from 30 feet could have ended him, but civilians were packed below his line of fire. Any round that pierced through could rip into a mother, a child, a bystander. Snipers are trained to calculate risks, and this one was too great. There was only one option left: close the distance. Kyle's reload was clumsy, adrenaline making his hands betray him. The magazine caught on the lip of the rifle, precious seconds slipping away. Elena exploded forward, steel rod gripped like an extension of her own bone. 3 steps, knees bent, lungs locked. She slammed the bar across his ribs, bone cracked. His breath collapsed into a strangled grunt. The rifle clattered against the railing. Kyle's eyes went wide. He hadn't planned for this. He hadn't planned for her. Elena didn't hesitate. A strike to the solar plexus folded him. A hook to the temple snapped his balance. She caught his arm, wrenched it backward, torque sharp enough to tear a shoulder. With one final drive, she pinned him chest down on the polished tile. Steel rod angled against his throat. "Don't move," she said, voice like ice. "Security is coming. Fight me. And it ends now." Kyle whimpered, the defiance stripped out of him. The predator was suddenly prey. Around them, the mall stilled. Shoppers sobbed. Children clung to parents. But no one moved closer. They all knew they had just watched something impossible. For 52 seconds, Harborview Galleria had been a war zone. And now, silence. But then a voice cracked through it. Elena. Her heart froze. She turned, 30 feet away. Clutching her friend's arm, stood Izzy, her daughter, 16 years old, eyes wide, lips trembling, staring at her mother not as a teacher, not as a suburban parent, but as a soldier. Elena's chest tightened. The life she had buried for 2 decades lay exposed in one brutal instant. And though Kyle Renshaw was broken beneath her, Elena knew the real battle, the one with her daughter's trust, was only just beginning. 4 minutes later, the first police officers stormed the scene. SWAT followed 3 minutes after that. By then, Kyle Renshaw was already zip-tied, his weapon secured. Elena had triaged 3 wounded civilians, improvising tourniquets from belts and scarves. None would die. The detectives called it extraordinary. The FBI would later call it a flawless urban combat neutralization. But for Elena, the only opinion that mattered stood 20 feet away, arms crossed tight, eyes locked on her with a mixture of fear, awe, and a question no child should ever have to ask. "Who are you in the security office?" Detective Carla Ruiz leaned across the table. "Ma'am, your actions prevented at least 25 deaths, maybe more. You're trained." "Aren't you?" Elena hesitated. For 2 decades she had avoided this exact moment. But the cameras had seen her movements, the crowd had seen her strikes. Izzy had seen everything. There was no hiding left. "Marine Corps," she admitted quietly. "Scout sniper, Iraq, Afghanistan." Ruiz blinked. How many? Elena looked down. Memories flickered: the sandstorm, the trigger squeeze, the silence after the shot. 119 confirmed. The room fell still. Even among veterans, that number carried weight. But Ruiz pressed. "Then why didn't you shoot him? You had the angle. You had the chance." Elena's gaze shifted to the window, where Izzy sat across the hall giving her statement. The teenager kept glancing back, searching her mother's face. Elena swallowed. "Because I'm not that person anymore," she said. "Not since the day my daughter was born." And yet, both women in the room knew that wasn't entirely true. The footage told a different story. Elena hadn't fought like someone who had left the battlefield behind. She fought like someone who had carried it quietly into civilian life, waiting for the moment it might surface again. News of the incident spread within hours. Headlines read, "The Hidden Hero of Harborview." Clips of the 52-second takedown looped across every major network. Social media flooded with praise. Marine mom saves 200 lives. Teacher turned sniper stops mass shooting. The warrior next door. But Elena avoided the cameras. She didn't want interviews. She didn't want applause. She wanted only to sit at her kitchen table with Izzy, the earbuds still in their box between them, and tell the truth she had hidden for so long. That night, under the porch light. She finally did. Izzy listened, silent, as her mother spoke of deserts and dust storms, of nights when silence was broken only by the crack of a rifle and the breath she held behind the scope. She spoke of the ghosts she had tried to bury, of the quiet promise she made the day Izzy was born to never let her see that side of her. When Elena finished, she braced for rejection, for fear, for the distance that might grow between them. Instead, Izzy reached across the table and took her hand. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm glad you were scary, just for 52 seconds. Elena's throat closed. The earbuds remained unopened. Instead, Izzy placed them on her desk beside a printed still from the mall security footage, her mother pinning the gunman to the ground. Cardigan torn, eyes burning with the fire of a soldier. "My mom," she would tell anyone who asked, "is a hidden legend." Kyle Renshaw was sentenced to life without parole. Experts testified that Elena's actions had prevented one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. But Elena didn't frame the articles or hang the commendations. She returned to her quiet home, her garden, her classroom memories. Still, when local police asked her to speak on urban combat tactics, she agreed. Not for recognition, but because she knew the world wasn't as safe as she had once promised her daughter. And because sometimes, the person you used to be is exactly the person the world needs you to be, if only for 52 seconds.